The December wind cut through Nashville like a blade, carrying with it the promise of snow and the sharp scent of winter. George Strait pulled his black Silverado to the curb as steam began rising from under the hood, the engine making sounds that no amount of money could fix in the next 10 minutes. He was already running late for his session at Ocean Way Studios, where he was supposed to lay down vocals for what his producer swore would be his next #1 hit. "Well, hell," he muttered, stepping out onto the cracked sidewalk of Dickerson Pike. This wasn't exactly Music Row. The gleaming studios and industry offices felt like a different world from this stretch of road lined with pawn shops, check-cashing places, and apartments that had seen better decades. The cold bit at his face as he pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts for a tow truck. That's when he heard it, a small voice cutting through the traffic noise. "Fresh cookies, homemade chocolate chip, only $2. George looked up to see a boy, maybe 12 years old, standing near the bus stop with a cardboard box in his hands. The kid was bundled in a jacket that was too big for him, probably a hand-me-down with worn sneakers that had seen too many puddles. His breath came out in small clouds as he called out to passing cars, most of which didn't even slow down. Something about the scene made George forget about his broken truck and the studio session. He walked over, his boots crunching on the salt-stained sidewalk. "Hey there, son," George said, his Texas drawl soft against the harsh Nashville wind. "What's your name?" The boy looked up, and George could see the wariness in his brown eyes, the kind of careful distance that comes from learning too young that not all strangers have good intentions. "Billy Henderson, sir," the boy said, straightening his shoulders like he was trying to look older. "You interested in some cookies? My mom makes them fresh every morning. They're real good." George peered into the box. About a dozen cookies sat wrapped in plastic sandwich bags, each one looking like it had been packaged with care. The smell was incredible. Real butter, real vanilla, the kind of homemade goodness that reminded him of his own childhood in Texas. "How much for the whole box?" George asked. Billy's eyes widened. "The whole box? That'd be $24, sir, but you don't have to." "24 it is," George said, pulling out his wallet. He handed the boy 2 20s. "Keep the change." Billy stared at the bills like they might disappear if he blinked. "Are you sure, mister? That's a lot. What's your mom's name, Billy?" "Rebecca Henderson. She's—" Billy hesitated, then seemed to decide George was trustworthy enough. "She's sick, real sick. That's why I'm out here. We need the money for her medicine and stuff." George felt something twist in his chest. He'd been blessed with success, with more money than he could spend in several lifetimes. And here was this kid selling cookies in the cold to help pay for his mother's medical bills. "Where do you live, Billy?" The boy pointed down a side street to a cluster of apartment buildings that looked like they'd been beige once, but had faded to the color of old newspapers. "Green Valley Apartments. Building C. And you come out here every day?" "Every day. I don't have school. Weekends, holidays. Mom doesn't like it, but—" Billy shrugged, a gesture that seemed too mature for his small frame. "We need the money." George looked at his phone. His manager would be calling soon, wondering where he was. The studio was booked solid, and rescheduling would cost thousands. But somehow, standing here with this kid who was working harder than most adults George knew, none of that seemed important. "Billy, you mind if I ask you something?" "Yes, sir. How long has your mom been sick?" Billy's face clouded over. "About 8 months now. The doctors say it's cancer. She's doing chemo and all that, but it makes her real tired. She used to clean offices at night, but she can't do that anymore, not regular anyway." The wind picked up, sending a McDonald's wrapper skittering across the parking lot behind them. George noticed how Billy pulled his jacket tighter, how his lips were starting to turn a little blue around the edges. "What about your dad?" "He died when I was 7. Car accident." Billy said it matter-of-factly, like he'd learned to accept hard truths as just part of life. It's just me, Mom, and my brother Tyler. But he's been having some problems lately. George didn't push for details, but he could imagine. A teenage boy with a sick mother and no father figure. That was a recipe for trouble in any neighborhood, but especially in one like this. "Listen, Billy," George said, making a decision that felt both impulsive and completely right. "I want you to take this box of cookies home to your mom and tell her a friend bought them all, and I want you to take this too." He pulled out another $100 bill. Billy's mouth fell open. "Sir, I can't take that. That's too much." "Yes, you can. And Billy, I don't want you out here selling cookies in weather like this anymore. It's too cold, and you're just a kid, but we need the money." "I know you do." George looked at his phone again, then at the steam still rising from his truck's hood. "Tell you what, give me your mom's phone number. I'd like to talk to her." Billy looked uncertain. "She doesn't like taking charity." "This isn't charity. This is one person helping another. There's a difference." The boy seemed to consider this, then carefully wrote down a phone number on the back of one of the empty cookie bags. "She's probably sleeping right now. The chemo makes her real tired. I'll call later then." George pocketed the number. "Billy, can I ask you one more thing?" "Yes, sir." "Do you like school?" Billy nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. I'm good at math and reading. My teacher, Mrs. Johnson, she says I'm real smart." "I bet you are." George smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt all day. "You get on home now, okay? Get warm." Billy clutched the money in the empty box to his chest. "Thank you, mister. Really. She's gonna cry happy tears." As Billy walked away, George pulled out his phone and called his manager. "Jack? Yeah, it's me. I'm gonna be late for the session." "No, the truck broke down. Look, can we push it to tomorrow? Something came up." He could hear Jack's frustration through the phone, but George wasn't really listening anymore. He was watching Billy Henderson disappear around the corner, heading home to a sick mother and an uncertain future, carrying more money than he'd probably seen in months. George had built his career on songs about real people facing real problems, heartbreak, hard work, small-town dreams. But standing here on Dickerson Pike, he realized he'd been writing about these struggles from the outside looking in. Billy Henderson lived them every single day. The tow truck arrived 20 minutes later, but George barely noticed. He was already thinking about that phone number in his pocket and what he was going to say when he called. Rebecca Henderson sat in the faded blue recliner that had been her world for the past 3 months, wrapped in the quilt her mother had made before she died. The apartment was small and drafty, with thin walls that let in every sound from the neighbors, the baby crying upstairs, the couple arguing next door, the television always too loud in 3B. She'd tried to sleep after Billy left for his weekend cookie route, but the nausea from yesterday's chemo treatment kept rolling through her in waves. The doctors had warned her about this, the way the medicine that was supposed to save her life would make her feel like dying some days. The front door opened with its familiar squeak, and she heard Billy's voice, higher and more excited than it had been in months. Mom, you're not going to believe what happened." "No." Rebecca forced herself to sit up straighter, putting on the smile she wore whenever Billy came home. No matter how bad she felt, she wouldn't let her baby boy see her give up. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, as Billy burst into the living room, his cheeks red from the cold. "How did the cookies do today?" Billy set down the empty box and pulled the crumpled bills from his pocket. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat when she saw the hundreds mixed in with the 20s. "Billy, where did you get this money?" Her voice was sharper than she intended, panic creeping in. "Please tell me you didn't." "No, Mom, it's okay. This man, he bought all the cookies, all of them. And he gave me extra because he said you were sick and we needed it." Rebecca counted the money with trembling fingers. $240, more than she usually made in a week back when she could work full-time. "Billy, honey, what man?" What did he look like? He was real nice, Mom. Had a cowboy hat and boots. He talked like he was from Texas or somewhere. He asked about you, about Dad, about Tyler. Billy sat down on the ottoman in front of her chair. He said he wanted to call you. Call me? Rebecca felt a familiar anxiety spike. Strangers who wanted to help often came with strings attached, or worse, questions from people who thought a sick single mother couldn't take care of her kids. I gave him your number. He said he'd call later because he knew you might be sleeping. Before Rebecca could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. Should I answer it? She asked Billy, who nodded eagerly. Hello, Mrs. Henderson. This is George Strait. I met your son Billy today. Rebecca's heart stopped. George Strait. The George Strait. The king of country music was calling her phone. Mr. Strait? I'm sorry. I think there might be some mistake. No mistake, Mom. Your boy was selling cookies on Dickerson Pike today, and I bought them all. Best chocolate chip cookies I've had in years, by the way. Rebecca looked at Billy, who was watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. She could barely process what was happening. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Strait, but I can't accept. Mrs. Henderson, can I ask you something? How are you feeling today? The question was so gentle, so genuinely concerned, that Rebecca felt tears spring to her eyes. When was the last time someone had asked her that? Really asked, not just as polite conversation. It's been a rough day, she admitted. The treatments make me pretty sick sometimes. I imagine they do. Billy told me you have cancer. Yes, sir, breast cancer, stage 3. The words came out automatically now, like a medical mantra she'd learned to recite. And you're doing chemo? Yes, sir. 3 treatments down, 3 more to go. Then maybe surgery, depending on how well it works. There was silence on the other end, and Rebecca wondered if the connection had dropped. Then she heard George clear his throat. Mrs. Henderson, I hope you don't think I'm overstepping, but Billy also told me you've been having some financial difficulties. Rebecca felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She'd taught Billy to be honest, but she hadn't expected him to share their private struggles with a stranger, even a kind one. We're managing, she said, the pride in her voice automatic. I'm sure you are. You've raised a fine boy, Mrs. Henderson. Polite, hard-working, smart as a whip. But no 12-year-old should be selling cookies on the street in December to help pay for his mother's medical bills. Rebecca closed her eyes. Mr. Strait, I appreciate your concern, but Billy wanted to help. I've tried to talk him out of it, but he's stubborn. Wonder where he gets that from, George said with a chuckle that held no judgment. Mrs. Henderson, I want to help your family. Not just today, not just with the cookies, really help. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. Let me tell you something. I've been blessed in this life, more blessed than any one person deserves to be. I've got more money than I can spend, more success than I dreamed of as a kid. But you know what I don't have? I don't have the courage your son showed today, standing out there in the cold, working to help his family. Rebecca felt tears rolling down her cheeks now. Billy scooted closer, taking her free hand in his small one. There's something else, George continued. I lost my daughter Jennifer in a car accident in 2006. She was 13. Every time I see a kid Billy's age working that hard, caring that much about his family, it reminds me of her, of how proud I was of the person she was becoming. Rebecca's heart broke a little more. She'd heard about George Strait's tragedy, like everyone in Nashville had. The king of country music losing his teenage daughter. No amount of money or fame could fix that kind of pain. I'm so sorry for your loss, she whispered. Thank you. What I'm trying to say is, helping Billy, helping your family, it's not charity. It's what my Jennifer would have wanted me to do. It's what any decent person should do when they have the means. Rebecca looked at Billy, who was listening intently to her side of the conversation. Then she thought about Tyler, who hadn't come home last night, who was running with kids she didn't trust. She thought about the eviction notice stuffed in her kitchen drawer, the medical bills stacked on the counter, the way Billy's shoes had holes in them that he tried to hide with black marker. "What did you have in mind?" she asked quietly. "Well, first things first, those medical bills, do you have insurance?" "Some, but the co-pays, the deductibles, it adds up fast." "What if those were taken care of? All of them?" Rebecca couldn't speak. "And your rent? Billy mentioned you live in Green Valley Apartments. What if that was handled for a while, give you time to focus on getting better?" "Mr. Strait, that's too much. I can't. Mrs. Henderson, can I tell you something else? In all my years in the music business, I've met a lot of people, some genuine, some not so much. But your boy Billy, in the 5 minutes I talked to him, showed more character than most adults I've known for years. A family that raises a kid like that deserves help when they need it." The apartment door slammed open, making both Rebecca and Billy jump. Tyler stood in the doorway, 17 and angry, his dark hair hanging in his eyes. "Mom, whose truck is parked outside with a tow truck?" Tyler demanded, then noticed Rebecca on the phone. "Oh, sorry." Rebecca put her hand over the phone. "Tyler, this is George Strait on the phone. He bought all of Billy's cookies today." Tyler's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. "George Strait? Like the singer?" "Yes," Rebecca said. "Mr. Strait, I'm sorry, my older son just came home." "That's Tyler." "Yes, sir." "Mind if I say hello?" Rebecca looked at Tyler, who shrugged and held out his hand for the phone. "Hello?" Tyler's voice was cautious. "Tyler, this is George Strait. Your mom tells me you're 17. "Yes, sir." "You taking care of your mom and little brother?" Tyler's jaw tightened. "Best I can." "I'm sure you are. It's not easy being the man of the house when you're still figuring out how to be a man, is it?" Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "No, sir, it's not." "Your brother Billy, he's something special. Told me you've been having some rough times lately." "Did he now?" Tyler's voice was flat. "Tyler, let me ask you something. You still in school?" "Not really." "Why not?" Tyler looked at his mother, then at Billy. "Hard to focus on algebra when your mom might die and your family might get evicted." George's voice was gentle when he responded. "I understand that, but dropping out isn't going to help your mom get better or keep your family together. In fact, it might make things worse. Easy for you to say. You're rich." "You're right, I am. I'm also old enough to have made a lot of mistakes. Want to know the biggest one?" Tyler didn't answer, but he didn't hang up either. Thinking that school was just about book learning. Thinking that working hard in class wouldn't matter in the real world. "Tyler, you know what matters most in the music business? The same thing that matters in every business. Showing up. Every day. Even when you don't want to. Even when things are hard. School teaches you that." Tyler was quiet. "Tyler, if your family's financial problems were taken care of, would you go back to school?" "I don't know. Maybe." "That's honest. I appreciate that." George paused. "Tyler, put your mom back on, would you?" Tyler handed the phone to Rebecca, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Henderson, I want to meet with you and your boys. All 3 of us together. Can you come to my office Monday morning?" Rebecca's mind raced. "I have a doctor's appointment Monday." "What time?" 10:30. "How about 2 o'clock then? I'll have my assistant send you the address. Mr. Strait, I don't want you to think we're taking advantage." "Mrs. Henderson, do me a favor. Stop worrying about taking advantage and start thinking about getting better. Your boys need their mom healthy." After they hung up, the 3 of them sat in the living room, the silence heavy with possibility and disbelief. "Mom," Billy said finally, "is he really gonna help us?" Rebecca looked at her boys, Billy with his hopeful eyes and Tyler with his carefully guarded expression, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. "I think maybe he is, baby," she whispered. "I think maybe he is." Monday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of drizzle that made everything in Nashville look like a watercolor painting left in the rain. Rebecca Henderson sat in the waiting room of the Tennessee Oncology Clinic, trying to focus on the magazine in her lap instead of the conversation she'd be having in just a few hours. The blood work results weren't what she'd hoped for. Dr. Patricia Williams had used words like responding slower than expected and may need to adjust the treatment plan. What she meant was that the chemo wasn't working as well as they'd hoped, and Rebecca might need more rounds, maybe different drugs, possibly surgery sooner than planned. Mrs. Henderson, Dr. Williams appeared in the doorway, her professional smile not quite hiding the concern in her eyes. "Could we talk for a few minutes?" They sat in the small consultation room with its motivational posters and boxes of tissues strategically placed on every surface. Rebecca had learned to read the subtle signs. When doctors offered tissues, the news usually wasn't good. "The numbers aren't where we want them to be," Dr. Williams said gently. "The tumor markers are still elevated, and the imaging shows the mass hasn't shrunk as much as we'd hoped after 3 treatments. Rebecca felt the familiar cold dread settle in her stomach. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to be more aggressive. I want to switch you to a different chemo cocktail, something stronger. The side effects will be more intense, more nausea, fatigue, possible neuropathy in your hands and feet." "How much more expensive?" Rebecca asked, because that was always the question that came after the medical explanations. Dr. Williams hesitated. "Your insurance should cover most of it, but the copays will be higher, probably around $800 per treatment." Rebecca did the math quickly. 6 more treatments at $800 each, plus the copays for all the additional tests and follow-up appointments. Even with the money George Strait had given Billy, they'd be buried in debt within 2 months. "Mrs. Henderson, I know money is a concern, but I'll figure it out," Rebecca said automatically. She always figured it out. She had to. Dr. Williams studied her chart. "There are some assistance programs we can look into, and Mrs. Henderson, try not to stress about the financial side. Stress can actually impact treatment outcomes." Easy to say when you're not the one lying awake at night, calculating whether you can afford to save your own life, Rebecca thought. 2 hours later, she sat in the parking lot of a downtown Nashville office building, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. Billy sat beside her in his best khakis and the button-down shirt they'd found at Goodwill last month. Tyler slouched in the back seat, wearing clean jeans and the one polo shirt he owned, his attitude somewhere between skeptical and hopeful. "Mom," Billy said, "what if he changed his mind? What if he decided we're not worth helping?" "Billy Henderson, don't you ever let me hear you say you're not worth helping," Rebecca said firmly. "We're good people going through a hard time. That's nothing to be ashamed of." Tyler snorted. "Rich people help when they feel like it, when it makes them feel good about themselves. Then they move on to the next charity case." "Tyler," Rebecca started. "No, Mom, it's true. Remember when that church said they'd help with Dad's funeral expenses? They paid for the flowers and acted like they'd solved all our problems? Where were they when you got sick?" Rebecca couldn't argue with that. The casseroles and kind words had lasted about 2 weeks after the funeral. The bills had lasted much longer. "This feels different," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure why. The office building was nicer than anywhere Rebecca had been in months. Polished marble floors, modern furniture, the kind of place where people made decisions that affected millions of dollars. She felt underdressed, despite her best efforts. The elevator ride to the 15th floor was silent. Billy pressed close to her side, and even Tyler seemed subdued by their surroundings. "Henderson family?" The receptionist smiled warmly. "Mr. Strait is waiting for you in conference room A, right down the hall." George Strait looked different in his office than he had on the street, still approachable, but surrounded by the trappings of serious success. Gold records lined the walls, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Nashville spread out like a promise below. "Mrs. Henderson, Billy, Tyler," he said, standing to greet them. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." They arranged themselves around the polished conference table. George sat across from them, and Rebecca noticed he'd removed his cowboy hat, a small gesture of respect that meant more to her than he probably realized. "How did your doctor's appointment go this morning?" George asked. Rebecca was surprised he'd remembered. "Not as well as I'd hoped. They want to change my treatment plan. More aggressive chemo." "More expensive?" "Yes." There was no point in sugarcoating it. George nodded, then reached for a folder on the table. "Mrs. Henderson, I've taken the liberty of having my attorney look into your situation. I hope you don't mind." Rebecca's defenses went up immediately. "What kind of looking into?" "Nothing invasive. Just understanding your current financial obligations, your medical expenses, things like that." George opened the folder. "Your mortgage on the apartment." "We rent," Rebecca corrected. "Right, your rent is $800 a month, and you're currently 3 months behind. Your utility bills are about $600 in arrears. Medical bills from your treatment so far total just over $27,000. Hearing the numbers laid out so starkly made Rebecca's cheeks burn. Beside her, Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mr. Strait," she said carefully, "I don't know what you're thinking of doing, but I'm thinking of helping," he said simply. "All of it. The rent, the utilities, the medical bills. Past, present, and future." The room went silent except for the hum of the building's heating system. Billy's mouth fell open. Tyler's expression didn't change, but Rebecca could see the tension in his shoulders. "That's..." Rebecca's voice came out as a whisper. "That's too much. I can't let you..." "Mrs. Henderson, let me tell you why I can." George leaned forward. "Last year, I made more money than your family will see in a lifetime. Not because I'm smarter or work harder than you. Trust me, any mother raising 2 boys while fighting cancer works harder than any musician ever has. I made that money because I got lucky, because I had opportunities, because sometimes the world is random in its kindness." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "But it's also random in its cruelty. You didn't choose to get cancer. Your boys didn't choose to lose their father. Tyler didn't choose to become the man of the house at 17. Billy didn't choose to sell cookies in the cold to help pay for his mother's medicine." Tyler spoke for the first time since they'd sat down. "So what do you want from us?" George turned to him. "Smart question. I want Billy to keep being the good kid he is, keep doing well in school, keep helping his family, but as a kid, not as a breadwinner." He looked at Rebecca. "I want you to focus on getting better. No more worrying about whether you can afford treatment. No more lying awake, calculating bills." Then his attention turned back to Tyler. "And I want you to go back to school." Tyler's jaw tightened. "I told you, I don't know if..." "Tyler, can I tell you something? My daughter Jennifer, she would have been about your age now. She was smart, stubborn, passionate about everything. Sound familiar?" Tyler didn't respond, but Rebecca could see the impact of George's words. "Before she died, she used to talk about all the things she wanted to do with her life. College, career, maybe a family of her own someday. She had plans, dreams. You know what she never talked about? Giving up on those dreams because life got hard." George reached into the folder again and pulled out a check. Rebecca couldn't see the amount from where she sat, but she saw Tyler's eyes widen when George slid it across the table. "This covers everything I mentioned, plus a little extra for groceries, gas, whatever you need. But Tyler, there's a condition." "Here it comes," Tyler muttered. "You go back to school. Not just show up, actually try. Get decent grades. Graduate. And if I don't..." George's expression grew serious. "Then you're choosing to let your mother worry about money while she's fighting for her life. You're choosing to let your little brother think that when things get tough, quitting is an option. Is that really who you want to be?" Tyler was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "What if I'm too far behind? What if I can't catch up? Then we get you help. Tutoring, whatever you need. Rebecca reached over and took Tyler's hand. It was bigger than hers now, calloused from the part-time construction work he'd been doing instead of attending school. "Tyler," she said softly, "your dad wanted you to graduate. It was important to him." Tyler's composure cracked slightly. "Dad wanted a lot of things that didn't happen. That doesn't mean we give up on the ones that still can." Billy, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Tyler, remember when you helped me with that science project last year? The one about bridge building? You explained all that engineering stuff better than my teacher did." Tyler glanced at his little brother. "That was just... You're smart," Billy continued. "Smarter than you think you are, and you're already taking care of us. Going to school would just be another way to do that, right? For the future." George watched the family dynamics play out, seeing the love and concern that bound them together despite their struggles. "Tyler, you don't have to decide right now. Think about it tonight. But I meant what I said. This help isn't temporary. It's for as long as your family needs it." Rebecca looked at the check on the table, then at her boys, then at George. "Why?" she asked. "Why us? Why so much?" George was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the window overlooking Nashville. "Mrs. Henderson, success is a funny thing. The more you have, the more you realize how little control you actually have over getting it. I've been incredibly blessed, but I've also lost the most important thing in my life. Money can't bring Jennifer back, but maybe it can help keep another family together." He turned back to them. "Besides, meeting Billy reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Sometimes the best people are the ones life has tested the hardest. Your family has that strength, that character. Helping you isn't charity. It's an investment in the kind of people this world needs more of." Rebecca felt tears sliding down her cheeks, and for once, she didn't try to hide them. Billy reached over and squeezed her hand, while Tyler stared at the table, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "There's one more thing," George said. He pulled out a business card and slid it across to Rebecca. "Janet Morrison. She's a social worker I've worked with before on other situations like this. She'll help coordinate everything, payments to doctors, landlord, utilities. She'll also be available if you need any other kind of support." "Like what?" Rebecca asked. "Counseling, if any of you want to talk to someone about everything you've been through. Career counseling for Tyler when he's ready to think about college or trade school. Academic support for Billy. Whatever helps." Tyler finally looked up. "You really think I could go to college?" "Tyler, I think you could do anything you set your mind to. The question is what you think." The meeting lasted another hour, with George explaining the logistics of the help he was offering and answering their questions. By the time they left, Rebecca felt like she was floating. For the first time in months, she could imagine a future that didn't involve choosing between rent money and medicine. In the elevator, Billy couldn't contain his excitement. "Mom, did you hear what he said about the medical bills? All of them." Tyler was quieter, but Rebecca could see something had shifted in him. "Mom," he said as they reached the parking garage, "I want to go back to school." Rebecca hugged both her boys in the cold concrete space, surrounded by expensive cars and the echo of their voices. They had a long way to go. Her treatment, Tyler's education, Billy's childhood that had been interrupted by adult worries. But for the first time in months, those challenges felt manageable. "Come on," she said, wiping her eyes. "Let's go home and figure out how to tell the landlord we can pay our rent." As they drove away, none of them noticed the dark sedan that had been parked across the street, or the photographer inside who had captured their entire visit. David Parker had been a journalist for 15 years, long enough to know that real stories often fell into your lap when you weren't looking for them. He'd been grabbing coffee at the Starbucks across from the Sovereign Center when he spotted the familiar figure of George Strait, walking into the building with what looked like a struggling family, a sick-looking woman and two boys. His instincts kicked in immediately. George Strait didn't do random business meetings with regular folks. This had to be something worth investigating. 3 hours later, after some discreet inquiries and a few phone calls to contacts in the building, David had the basic outline. George Strait was apparently helping a local family in financial distress. The woman had cancer, the kids were struggling, and the king of country was playing hero. David's editor at the Nashville scene would eat this story up. Feel-good celebrity pieces always got clicks, especially when they involved someone as beloved as George Strait. David could already see the headline, "George Strait's Secret Act of Kindness. Country Legend Saves Local Family." But as David dug deeper, calling sources at schools and hospitals, checking public records, the story got more complicated. Tyler Henderson had indeed stopped attending high school 3 months ago. Rebecca Henderson's medical bills were substantial, and the family was behind on rent. But there were other details too. Tyler had been arrested twice in the past month, once for shoplifting, once for being in a car with kids who had marijuana. Nothing serious, but enough to paint a picture of a teenager going off the rails. David found himself at a crossroads. He could write the inspiring story about George Strait helping a family in need, or he could write the more complex truth about a celebrity getting involved in a situation that might be messier than it appeared. He chose complexity. The article went live Tuesday morning. George Strait's charity case, when celebrity help enables bad behavior. David's piece questioned whether giving handouts to struggling families actually helped them or created dependency. He highlighted Tyler's legal troubles, suggested that Rebecca Henderson might be taking advantage of her celebrity benefactor, and quoted unnamed sources who wondered if George Strait was being naive about the family he'd chosen to help. By noon, the story had been picked up by 3 Nashville blogs and a Memphis television station. By evening, it was trending on social media under George Strait Scam. Rebecca Henderson first heard about the article from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who knocked on her door Tuesday afternoon with a concerned expression and a printed copy of the story. "Rebecca, honey, you need to see this," Mrs. Chen said, handing over the papers. "That reporter, he's saying some nasty things." Rebecca read the article twice, feeling sick to her stomach in a way that had nothing to do with chemotherapy. The story made her sound like a con artist, and Tyler like a criminal. The medical details were accurate, but presented in a way that made her treatment sound suspicious, like she was exaggerating her illness for sympathy. "Mom!" Billy appeared in the doorway, home from school with his backpack still slung over his shoulder. "What's wrong? You look like you're gonna throw up." Rebecca quickly folded the papers, but Billy had already seen her expression. "It's nothing, sweetheart. How was school?" But Billy wasn't easily distracted. "Mrs. Chen, why do you look worried too?" Mrs. Chen glanced at Rebecca uncertainly. She was a kind woman who had helped with Billy many times when Rebecca was too sick to pick him up from school, but she wasn't good at hiding her emotions. "Billy," Rebecca said carefully, "there's a newspaper article about us, about Mr. Strait helping our family. That's good, right? People should know he's nice." "Well, the reporter, he didn't write very nice things about us." Billy's face fell. "What kind of not nice things?" Before Rebecca could answer, the front door slammed. Tyler walked in, his face dark with anger and something that looked like shame. "Tyler?" Rebecca stood up, the newspaper clutching in her hands. "What's wrong? You haven't seen it yet?" Tyler's voice was harsh. "The whole school's talking about it. Kids are showing me the article on their phones, asking if we're really scamming George Strait." "We're not scamming anyone," Billy said, his voice small and confused. "Tell that to everyone else," Tyler snapped. "Tell that to the kids calling us charity cases and welfare queens." Rebecca felt her heart break a little more. "Tyler, honey, people who know us know the truth." Do they? Because according to this article, I'm some kind of juvenile delinquent, and you're a manipulative sick woman using her cancer to get money from celebrities. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat. I should go. Rebecca, if you need anything. After she left, the three of them sat in their small living room, the newspaper article like a toxic presence among them. Read it, Tyler said. Read what they're saying about us. Rebecca read aloud, her voice getting smaller with each paragraph. The article described Tyler as a high school dropout with a juvenile record, and referred to Rebecca as a single mother whose medical bills conveniently mounted just as she gained access to a wealthy benefactor. That's not true, Billy said, tears starting in his eyes. Mom got sick way before we met Mr. Strait. I know, baby, Rebecca said, pulling him close. The reporter got his facts wrong. Did he? Tyler asked bitterly. I did get arrested twice. I did drop out of school. Maybe he's right. Maybe we are just charity cases taking advantage of someone's kindness. Tyler Henderson, don't you dare, Rebecca said firmly. We didn't ask for this help. Mr. Strait offered it. Because I was selling cookies like some pathetic kid in a Christmas movie, Billy whispered. No, Rebecca said, her voice stronger now. Because you were being responsible and caring about your family. Because you showed character that impressed a man who's met thousands of people. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed George Strait's office number. Mrs. Henderson? This is Janet Morrison, the social worker George asked to help coordinate things for your family. I'm calling about the newspaper article. Miss Morrison, I don't know what to say. We never asked for this attention. Mrs. Henderson, please don't apologize. This isn't your fault. Unfortunately, when public figures help people, sometimes the media gets involved in ways that aren't helpful. Is Mr. Strait upset? Does he want to stop helping us? There was a pause. Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Strait specifically asked me to call and tell you that this changes nothing. The help he offered stands, regardless of what some reporter writes. Rebecca felt tears of relief. Thank you. I was so worried. However, there are some things we need to discuss. The attention might get worse before it gets better. Are you prepared for that? Rebecca looked at her boys, Billy wiping his eyes on his sleeve, Tyler staring at the floor with his hands clenched into fists. I don't know how to prepare for something like this. Well, first thing, don't talk to any reporters who call. Refer them to me or to Mr. Strait's publicist. Second, try to keep the boys' routines as normal as possible. Kids are resilient, but they need stability. After Janet hung up, Rebecca tried to process what their life had suddenly become. 24 hours ago, they'd been a private family dealing with private struggles. Now they were apparently a public story, subject to judgment from strangers who didn't know them. Mom, Billy said quietly, are people going to be mean to us now? Rebecca didn't know how to answer that. She'd seen how social media could turn on people, how quickly public opinion could shift from sympathy to scorn. Tyler stood up abruptly. I'm going for a walk. Tyler, wait. But he was already out the door, leaving Rebecca and Billy alone with the weight of unwanted fame. Wednesday morning brought more attention. Rebecca woke up to find 2 news vans parked outside Green Valley Apartments and a reporter trying to interview Mrs. Chen in the parking lot. We can't go out there, Rebecca told Billy as they peered through the curtains. How am I supposed to get to school? You're not today. Billy's face fell because of what the article said. Because there are reporters outside who might bother you. We'll figure this out, okay? But Billy was smarter than his 12 years. Mom, are we gonna have to give the money back? The question hit Rebecca like a physical blow. She hadn't even considered that possibility. But now that Billy had voiced it, the fear took root. What if the negative attention embarrassed George Strait? What if his team decided the Henderson family was more trouble than they were worth? Tyler returned from his walk, looking defeated. There are reporters at the school too. Kids are taking pictures with their phones, trying to get interviews about the charity family. Rebecca made a decision. We're not leaving this apartment today. Tomorrow, if things calm down, we'll go back to normal. But today, we stay put. What about your doctor's appointment? Tyler asked. Rebecca had forgotten. She was supposed to start the new chemo regimen today. I'll call and reschedule. No, Tyler said firmly. Mom, you can't put off treatment because of some stupid reporters. Tyler's right, Billy added. Your medicine is more important than newspaper people. Rebecca looked at her boys. Tyler, trying so hard to be the man of the family, and Billy, wise beyond his years. They were right, but how could she walk through a crowd of reporters to get to her car? The answer came in the form of a knock on the door. Rebecca peered through the peephole to see Janet Morrison standing outside with a warm smile and a large umbrella. Mrs. Henderson? It's Janet Morrison. I'm here to help you get to your appointment. Janet turned out to be a small, efficient woman in her 50s who had clearly dealt with media attention before. She'd parked her car in the back of the complex and had a plan for getting Rebecca out without being seen. The boys should stay here, Janet said. I'll pick up Billy's homework from his teacher and bring it by later. As they walked to Janet's car through a maintenance area that avoided the reporters, Rebecca felt grateful for this stranger who was helping them navigate a situation they'd never imagined facing. Ms. Morrison, Rebecca said as they drove toward the hospital, has this happened before? With families Mr. Strait has helped? Call me Janet. And yes, unfortunately it has. Public figures can't help people privately anymore without someone trying to make it into a story. The article made it sound like we're taking advantage of his kindness. Janet glanced at her. Rebecca, can I tell you something? I've been doing this work for 20 years. I've seen families in genuine need, and I've seen people trying to work the system. You're not working the system. You're a mother fighting cancer while raising two boys who clearly adore you. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with your family can see that. They arrived at the hospital to find more reporters in the parking lot. Janet sighed. These people have no shame. Come on, we'll go through the emergency entrance. The chemo treatment was harder than the previous ones. The new drugs made Rebecca violently ill within an hour, and she spent most of the day in the bathroom at the clinic, throwing up while Janet held her hair back. This is normal, the nurse assured them. The nausea should improve after the first few treatments as your body adjusts. By the time they returned to the apartment complex, the news vans had multiplied. Rebecca counted 5 vehicles with satellite dishes, plus several cars that looked like they might belong to bloggers or freelance reporters. This is insane, Rebecca whispered as they sat in Janet's car at the back of the complex. It'll die down, Janet said. These stories have a short attention span. Something else will distract them in a few days. But as they watched, Rebecca saw one of the reporters interviewing a woman she recognized. Tyler's ex-girlfriend's mother, someone who had never liked the Henderson family and had always made snide comments about Rebecca being a single mother. Oh no, Rebecca breathed. Janet, that woman, she's going to say terrible things about us. Janet followed her gaze. Who is she? Linda Walsh. Her daughter dated Tyler briefly. She never approved of him, always thought we were beneath her family. They watched as Linda gestured animatedly at the reporter, clearly enjoying her moment of attention. Rebecca could imagine what she was saying, probably confirming every negative stereotype the original article had suggested. Rebecca, Janet said gently, you can't control what other people say. You can only control how you respond. How do I respond to lies? By living your truth. By being the same good mother you've always been. By letting Tyler go back to school and Billy keep being a kid. The people who matter will see through the gossip. As they snuck back into the apartment through the maintenance entrance, Rebecca hoped Janet was right. but she couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had been fundamentally changed, that the privacy and dignity they'd fought so hard to maintain had been stripped away by strangers who saw them as entertainment rather than human beings. Inside the apartment, Billy was doing homework at the kitchen table, while Tyler sat on the couch, staring at his phone with a grim expression. "What is it?" Rebecca asked. Tyler held up his phone. "The story's gone national. It's on CNN's website now." Rebecca sank into a chair. Somehow, in the space of 24 hours, their private struggle had become a national conversation about celebrity charity, welfare dependency, and worthiness of help. "Mom," Billy said quietly, "I'm sorry I sold those cookies. I'm sorry I caused all this trouble." Rebecca felt her heart break all over again. Her 12-year-old son was apologizing for working to help his family, for being the kind of kid any parent would be proud of. "Billy Henderson," she said firmly, "you listened to me. You did nothing wrong, nothing. You were being responsible and caring, and anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about." But even as she said the words, Rebecca wondered if they were true. The attention was overwhelming, invasive, and potentially damaging to all of them. Had accepting George Strait's help been a mistake? Had they traded their privacy for financial security without understanding the real cost? Outside, the reporters continued their vigil, waiting for something, a statement, a photo, any new angle to keep the story alive. Rebecca closed the curtains and tried to figure out how to protect her family from a situation that seemed to be spiraling beyond anyone's control. The story might have died down on its own, as Janet Morrison had predicted, if not for what happened Thursday morning. Tyler Henderson, exhausted by 3 days of being trapped in the apartment and frustrated by the endless speculation about his family's character, made a decision that would change everything. He walked outside to face the reporters. Rebecca discovered what he'd done when she woke up to find the apartment empty, except for Billy, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table and looking worried. "Where's your brother?" she asked. "He went outside about an hour ago. He said he was tired of hiding." Rebecca rushed to the window and saw Tyler standing in the parking lot, surrounded by microphones and cameras, his 17-year-old face serious and determined. "My mom didn't ask George Strait for help," he was saying, as Rebecca opened the window to hear better. "My little brother was selling cookies because he wanted to help our family. Mr. Strait bought them because he's a good person who saw a kid working hard." A reporter pushed a microphone closer to Tyler's face. "But what about your arrest record? The shoplifting charge?" Tyler didn't flinch. "Yeah, I got arrested twice. You want to know why? Because I was desperate and stupid and 17 years old. Because watching your mom get sicker every day while you can't do anything to help makes you do dumb things." "Are you saying your criminal behavior was justified?" "No," Tyler said firmly. "I'm saying it was wrong, and I know it was wrong, and I'm trying to do better. That's what people do when they mess up. They try to do better." Rebecca watched her son face down a crowd of adults who were treating him like a spectacle and felt a mixture of pride and terror. "Tyler Henderson!" she called from the window. "You get back in here right now!" But Tyler wasn't finished. "You want to write about my family? Here's the truth. My mom is the strongest person I know. She's fighting cancer while raising 2 kids by herself, and she's never once complained or felt sorry for herself. My little brother Billy is smarter and more mature than most adults, and he was selling cookies because he loves our family." His voice grew stronger, more confident. "And George Strait, he didn't have to help us. He could have bought Billy's cookies and driven away and never thought about us again, but he didn't. He saw a family that needed help, and he helped us. That's what good people do." A reporter from Channel 4 asked, "Don't you think it sends the wrong message when celebrities just hand out money instead of encouraging people to solve their own problems?" Tyler's expression hardened. "Lady, we've been solving our own problems for 5 years, ever since my dad died. We solved the problem of paying rent by my mum working 3 jobs. We solved the problem of groceries by shopping at dollar stores and food banks. We solved the problem of me not having decent clothes for school by shopping at Goodwill. He paused, looking directly into the news cameras. We solved the problem of Mum's cancer treatments by my little brother standing in the cold selling cookies for $2 each. We've been solving our own problems until we ran out of problems we could solve by ourselves. Rebecca saw tears in her son's eyes, but his voice stayed steady. So, when someone with the means to help actually helps, maybe instead of writing articles about whether we deserve it, you should write about why more people don't do what George Strait did. Tyler turned and walked back toward the apartment building, leaving the reporters calling questions after him. Rebecca met him at the door and pulled him into a fierce hug. "Tyler, honey, you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Tyler said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "I was tired of other people telling our story wrong." Billy appeared beside them. "Tyler, that was awesome. You told them the truth." "Yeah, well, hopefully it helps." Tyler pulled back from his mother's embrace. "Mom, I've been thinking, I want to go back to school today." "Tyler, there are still reporters outside." "There are always going to be reporters somewhere, talking about something. I can't hide forever." Tyler's jaw was set in that stubborn way Rebecca recognized from his father. "Besides, I told Mr. Strait I'd go back to school. I meant it." Rebecca looked at her older son, really looked at him. Somehow, over the past few days, he'd grown up even more. The angry, defensive boy who dropped out 3 months ago had been replaced by a young man who could face down hostile reporters and speak his truth with dignity. "Okay," she said, "but I'm driving you." "Mum, you don't have to." "I'm driving you," she repeated firmly, "and I'm walking you to the front door. Let them take pictures of that." An hour later, Rebecca Henderson walked through the crowd of reporters with her head held high, Tyler beside her and Billy on her other side. They'd all dressed carefully, not fancy, but clean and dignified. Rebecca wore her best sweater and the scarf that hid how much weight she'd lost. Tyler wore his polo shirt and the khakis they'd bought for his meeting with George Strait. Billy carried his backpack and wore the smile that had charmed a country music legend. The reporters called out questions, but Rebecca had learned from watching Tyler. She stopped and faced them directly. "I'll make one statement," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "My family is grateful for George Strait's kindness, just as we're grateful for every person who has helped us during this difficult time. We didn't ask for public attention, but since we have it, I want to say this. There are thousands of families facing medical crises and financial hardship. Instead of criticizing those who help them, maybe we should ask why so few people do." She paused, looking into the cameras. "My sons are good boys who are learning to be good men. I'm proud of them every single day. That's all I have to say." Rebecca drove Tyler to school through a Nashville that suddenly felt different. The reporters followed for a few blocks, then gave up when it became clear there would be no more drama. "Mom," Tyler said as they pulled into the school parking lot, "are you sure about this? People are going to stare, ask questions." "Let them," Rebecca said. "Tyler, what you said to those reporters this morning about us solving our own problems until we couldn't anymore, that was exactly right. We're not charity cases. We're people who needed help and were lucky enough to find it." Tyler nodded, then hesitated. "Mom, when I was selling weed with those guys, when I got arrested, I wasn't just being stupid. I was scared you were going to die and Billy and I would end up in foster care or something." Rebecca felt tears spring to her eyes. "Oh, honey, I know it was wrong. I know it was the worst possible way to try to help, but I didn't know what else to do." Rebecca reached over and took his hand. "Tyler, you were 17 years old, dealing with adult problems. You made mistakes, but you're learning from them. That's what matters now." "I won't mess this up," Tyler said. "The chance Mr. Strait gave us, The chance to have normal problems instead of impossible ones. I won't waste it. Rebecca watched her son walk into the school building, shoulders straight, ready to face whatever questions and comments waited for him. Then she drove Billy to his elementary school, where his teacher, Mrs. Johnson, met them at the front door. "Billy, Rebecca," Mrs. Johnson said warmly, "I'm so glad you're back. The class has been worried about Billy." "Have there been reporters here too?" Rebecca asked. "A few tried, but the principal sent them away. We don't allow media on school grounds without permission." Mrs. Johnson knelt down to Billy's level. "Billy, some of the kids might have questions about what they've seen on TV. You just tell them your family's business is private, okay?" Billy nodded solemnly. "Mrs. Johnson, are people mad at us for taking help from Mr. Strait?" Mrs. Johnson's expression softened. "Billy, honey, some people get confused about what's right and what's wrong. But anyone who knows you knows your family deserves all the help they can get." After dropping Billy off, Rebecca drove aimlessly through Nashville, processing everything that had happened. Her phone rang, George Strait's office number. "Mrs. Henderson, this is George. I saw Tyler's interview this morning." Rebecca's stomach tightened. "Mr. Strait, I'm so sorry. He was just trying to defend our family, but I know the attention is probably not what you wanted." "Mrs. Henderson, stop. That boy of yours is remarkable. What he said out there, the way he handled himself, you should be proud." "I am," Rebecca said, feeling tears again. "I'm so proud of both my boys. I'm calling because I want to meet with your family again, not about money or logistics. Those are handled. I want to talk about the future." "The future?" "Tyler mentioned college in that interview, said he might want to study engineering." "Billy's clearly bright as a whip. I'd like to talk about scholarships, educational opportunities, things like that." Rebecca pulled into a parking lot, overwhelmed. "Mr. Strait, you've already done so much. Mrs. Henderson, let me tell you something. Yesterday, after all this media mess started, my publicist advised me to distance myself from your family, said it would be better for my image to quietly end the arrangement." Rebecca's heart sank. "I understand. I told him he was fired." Rebecca blinked. "What?" "I fired him. Anyone who thinks helping a family in need is bad for my image isn't someone I want working for me." George's voice was firm. "Your family didn't create this circus, but you've handled it with more grace and dignity than most celebrities do when they're caught doing something actually wrong. Mr. Strait, I don't know what to say. Say you'll bring your boys by the office Friday afternoon. Let's talk about their futures, both of them." After hanging up, Rebecca sat in her car in the parking lot of a Nashville strip mall, watching ordinary people go about their ordinary lives. She thought about Tyler facing down reporters, about Billy worrying that people were mad at them for accepting help, about George Strait firing his publicist rather than abandoning their family. The past week had been a nightmare of unwanted attention and public judgment. But it had also revealed something important. Her boys were stronger than she'd known, and there were still good people in the world willing to stand up for what was right. Her phone buzzed with a text from Janet Morrison. "Saw Tyler's interview. Kid's got guts. How are you holding up?" Rebecca typed back, "We're okay, better than okay. We're still standing." And they were. Bruised by the experience, changed by it, but still standing. Still a family, still fighting. Rebecca started her car and drove home to the apartment that would be theirs for as long as they needed it, thanks to the kindness of a stranger who'd seen past the surface to the heart of who they really were. The reporters were mostly gone now, chasing newer stories. But Rebecca knew that the real story, the one about a family learning to accept help with dignity and a country music legend who understood that true wealth meant sharing it, that story would continue long after the cameras moved on. That evening, the three of them sat around their kitchen table, homework spread out between them, the ordinary chaos of family life resumed. Tyler was catching up on 3 months of missed algebra. Billy was reading a book about space exploration. Rebecca was going through medical bills that someone else would now pay. "Mom," Billy said without looking up from his book, "when I grow up, I want to help families like Mr. Strait helped us." "That's a good goal, sweetheart," Rebecca said. Tyler looked up from his math. "Me too. Whatever I end up doing, I want to remember this, how it felt to need help and get it." Rebecca smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in months: hope for the future. Not just hope that she would survive her cancer, but hope that her boys would grow up to be the kind of men who made the world a little better. Outside, Nashville hummed with its usual energy, music and dreams and people chasing both. Inside, the Henderson family continued the quiet work of building a life worth living, one day at a time. The story that had started with a broken-down truck and a boy selling cookies had become something larger, a reminder that kindness ripples outward in ways we can't always predict, and that sometimes the most important changes happen not in the grand gestures, but in the small moments when people choose to see each other's humanity. Rebecca looked at her boys, bent over their homework in the warm light of their kitchen, and knew that whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together. And that would be enough.